Give me the fucking Blastoise. This phrase, uttered by a fat, brutish kid to my less fat, less brutish friend all the way back in elementary school, in that exact wording, was the first time I ever heard of a Pokemon. You see, Pokemon trading cards were huge at that point, and basically turned into a type of currency at our school. No one had any idea how to play with them, but the mesmerizing allure of rare resources instilled into us by the capitalist hellscape of modernity meant that even snotty 7-year-olds like us sought after those cards with such vigor that people like my friend getting whatever the hell a Blastoise was taken from them by force wasn't exactly unusual. Shortly after, the video games hit my area, and they hit hard. I, like many of my peers, buried myself in the mythical lands of Kanto, Johto, and Hoenn, and waned away painless hours staring at a screen the size of a post stamp. Fast forward to today, and Pokemon is a cultural phenomenon. 25 years of games, cards, anime, and other media have cemented it as an evergreen in pop media. And more importantly, it has remained a universally beloved cornerstone of gaming. Everyone loves Pokemon, and there is nothing that upsets anyone. Right? Watching the public feelings and associations tied to the Pokemon franchise has been nothing short of a trip. In what feels like just a few short years, what was once a generally beloved series became maybe one of the most obnoxious topics of controversy in the entire gaming sphere. I could sit here and tell you why and how that happened, but there are like 300 videos with overdramatic thumbnails and hyperbolic language on that topic already, and they all kind of say the same thing anyway, so just pick one of those if that's what you're here for. Instead, I would like to investigate a very specific discrepancy regarding Pokemon. This might be relatable to some or none of you. At the risk of making a complete jackass of myself, or at least more than I already have, I shall now commit the grave sin of assuming that my subjective experiences are universal. You have been warned. Whenever I sit down to engage with Pokemon media, be it Let's Plays, Nuzlocke, or the recent anniversary stream, I get into a Pokemon mood. I think to myself, man, I really love Pokemon. It's such a special series for me. I should go back and replay my favorites. So I turn on my Nintendo device of choice, pick a game, start playing, and I don't really have all that much fun. Don't get me wrong, I always end up moderately enjoying whichever game I pick. The art style is mostly great, I hang out with my favorite Pokemon, yada yada yada. But no matter which entry I choose, I always inevitably encounter something that really bothers me and just stop playing. Be it engine troubles, antiquated mechanics, or larger issues, I always end up feeling disillusioned, to the point where I ask myself, do I even like Pokemon? And if so, why? Why does the series have such a strong grip on me, despite me not actually enjoying a substantial part of the content anymore? The obvious answer would be that Pokemon is a kid's game and I am an adult shackled by nostalgia, and that's definitely one explanation. The chokehold that nostalgia holds, especially over one part of the community, is infamous after all. However, I don't really want to limit myself to that easy explanation, because honestly it's kind of boring, so I want to present an alternative solution. When I think what I like about Pokemon, it's the idea of adventure, of traveling a comfortable region alongside my pet buddies. It's the idea of battling myself to the top, of overcoming challenges and topping evil schemes. It's the idea of becoming the champion, an uncontested, triumphant figurehead of the region, beloved and respected, carried by my wits and the strength of my companions. It's an idea. It's an idea and nothing more, because no game in the series actually includes any of this. Like, Sure, you can do a lot of things that approximate these concepts. You collect critters, you beat the champ, you traverse the region. But do any of the games actually revel in any of those aspects? Your adventure is really more like a guided tour through a theme park with hand-holding and roadblocks everywhere, even in the coveted older games, don't kid yourself. The grand quest to be the very best and defeat the Pokemon League sounds cool on the back of the box, but is deflated massively by just how brain-dead the combat encounters actually are. The fighting system actually has a pretty decent amount of depth, something you can clearly see in competitive play, but when the actual enemy design and AI is so breezy that you can just snooze through, not only does your journey lose weight, but you also end up playing these games without ever engaging with half of the game's actual systems. Again, this is just as true for Diamond and Pearl as it is for X and Y. And the bond you share with your Pokemon? Up until a few games ago, there was basically no way to actually form that bond mechanically, aside from just using them to fight. And even the options we've been given with the dawn of the Poke-Ami and the like are incredibly limited and feel unsatisfying and shallow. When I first got Sapphire, which was the first Pokemon game I owned myself, I chose Torchic and named it Flame Fu. I loved this little bugger. I pushed him through the game, never switching him out of my party, and most of the time I had him in spot number 1, despite type differences and whatnot. I watched him grow into a Blaziken and had him at the ace of my team. My connection to this pixelated poultry felt real, and I vividly remember experiencing true camaraderie with him as we battled and triumphed. But now, looking back, I realized that half of the things I attributed to Flame Fu didn't exist. There was no real way to bond with him. He was just a set of combat options. Combat which was so piss easy that I beat the game using almost nothing but my starter. I button mashed my way through this game using an unemotive blob of pixel art. And that was it. The Flame Fu that I loved did not exist. So here I am, my head filled with a myriad of preconceptions of what Pokemon is about, now faced with the realization that almost none of that actually really exists within the games I coveted so. But is that necessarily a bad thing? A relatively popular understanding of art is that the piece is incomplete until engaged with. A book is not finished until the reader completes it in their mind by reading it. A painting misses its final stroke until the viewer applies their personal brush within their head. In other words, me filling in the blanks the Pokemon games left might not really be an indicament of the game's lack of quality, and more so just a natural property of the medium. After all, it's not like these ideas aren't still implanted into you by the game itself, even if they aren't followed up upon. The NPCs make it a point to remark on the strength and difficulty of the League and how remarkable a challenge it is. The varied and imaginative world design gives off the feeling of traversing a vaster distance than we really are, and the constant affirmation of how much your Pokemon trust you instill into you a feeling of camaraderie. So even if the complete picture does not exist within the game, the roots are there, the starting points are given, and I just completed it with my heart and my brain, and isn't that what art is about? Okay, but what's my fucking point? I just bitched about how the games don't do anything to enable their core fantasy, but now I just soliloquied on how the breadcrumbs they leave create the need for fantasy in the first place. So, what the fuck am I trying to say? Well, I think what I've settled on is that the magic of Pokemon is based on a very simple fact. The fact that the core concept, the fundamental fantasy of the series and its premise, is tremendously strong. The promise of you, a mere child, befriending dragons and chimeras and guiding their fangs and talons to victory over a metaphorical and literal mountain of hurdles is such an attractive idea and creates such a strong sense of vast adventure that it, in a way, fills the gaps the games leave automatically. What we remember when we think of the greatness of Pokemon has nothing to do with the games themselves, especially not past the surface. We don't remember Gen 4's awful slowdowns, or Gen 1's spaghetti code, or the idiotic way special stats were handled. We remember what it was like to have a canvas upon which to paint with the color of our childlike wonder. Just how Satoshi Tajiri sought to immortalize his childhood fascination with wildlife, we too immortalize a part of ourselves within these games and our memories with them. What we think of when we remember the core Pokemon experience is nothing more or less than the interpretations of our childhood brains constructed using both our own wondrous worldview and the framework the games provided. We were curious about the world, so the games guided us through a theme park of simple but effective environments. We wanted to make cool friends, so the games offered us literally hundreds of fantasy dogs to befriend. We wanted to be the very best, like no one ever was, so the games allowed us to painlessly climb the ranks of the league in our own way, game mechanics be damned. It'd be easy to characterize this as just carried by nostalgia, but I think there is more to it. While Pokemon couldn't and can't provide us with the fulfillment of its own premise, it creates a framework whose elements and lack thereof facilitate us to live out that premise in our own interpretation of these games. And because nothing can ever compare to the games you create in your mind, the magic of Pokemon is completed by your own perspective and therefore transformed into something untouchably amazing. To set out and befriend these creatures, to wield them in battle and to construct glory upon their trust is such a naturally cool and strong idea that your mind ends up doing a lot of the heavy lifting. This could also explain why they have lost so much favor with its players, aside from controversies and the like. As technology has progressed, the gaps that once held our interpretation of certain elements of Pokemon have been filled by gamified representations of such elements. Interactions with your team, hazardous terrain on your adventure, occasional difficulty clusters, etc, etc, etc. That's just normal. Games evolve alongside technology and endeavor to fill out the gaps they had to leave for technical reasons back in the day. I wouldn't fault the games for that, it's just a natural flow of any artistry and its emergent new capabilities. However, one unfortunate side effect of it is that the idealized concepts our mind produced to bridge those gaps are now replaced with palpable game mechanics. And, well, how could design choices subservient to resource and time restrictions ever live up to the tailor-made, infinite perfection of the game you built in your head? I'm not saying the games are without fault. The series has been stagnant as hell, and frankly, with this technological advancement comes the responsibility to at least attempt to live up to the imagination of the players. But I do think there's something intrinsically ephemeral about the magic of Pokemon, some element of wonder and adventure that uniquely exists within us, the players. Our desire to explore, to make friends, to connect, to win, to validate not just our own existence, but also that of the bonds we choose to invest time and energy into. It's these desires that Pokemon as a concept naturally speaks to, and while the games keep expanding and evolving, I doubt they will ever truly live up to it. Because they never have. And in a way, they don't have to. Whatever Pokemon comes up with, what will forever remain special to me, and probably to all of us, is that it embraced and enabled fantasies that spoke to us. My bond to Flame Fu may not have existed in the game, but it existed in my head. I interpreted our wins and losses as different narrative beats in our relationship. I celebrated the clearly designed growths in his strength like surprising triumphs, and I gritted my teeth at his perceived hardships despite almost never fainting. I was a dumb piss baby attached to a fictional chicken. But that attachment was so real, that fantasy so compelling, that now, almost 15 years later, I still remember it. I don't really remember any of the weirdness I probably experienced in Hoenn. I barely remember the frustration of the confusing water routes, or the bare bones interactions with my team, or the nonsensical move distribution. None of that mattered, because what I do remember, what remained with me, what still lives on within me as an adult, is the bond I formed with a pixelated chicken named Flame Fu. Thank you so much for watching, and of course a special thank you to all our patrons, including Christian Finkbeiner, Fiction Ape, Paradja, Victor Perez, Sini, and Mr. Meander. Take care of yourself, be safe, and I'll see you all next time. Bye bye.